Leadership Fundamentals. Thanks again for joining us today, and go ahead, Seth, and take it away.
Thanks, Connor, and good morning to everyone that has joined us on this webinar on Frontline Leadership Fundamentals. Last month, Competitive Solutions, we sent out a survey to a select group of folks within our client list database and polled them on some of the challenges their frontline leaders are currently facing. And in a moment, I'll share with you the three of the top issues, top challenges that came out as a result of that. So this webinar is a direct result of feedback from our audience, our customers, on what needs to happen within their organization for their frontline leaders to be successful. And I'm going to kind of approach it a little bit differently in that I'm going to share with you three practical, auditable processes that will help your leaders manage less and accomplish more, help them be more successful. And one of the challenges that I see with a lot of training out there where we can send our supervisors, our leaders to classes, to 1, 2, 3-day classes, is that when they come back to the office, when they come back Monday morning, what is really different? Are they consistently utilizing the skills and behaviors they learned, or are they reverting back to their old ways because the stress and the pressure comes to them? So as we move forward with this, I'm going to share with you, again, three practical, auditable processes that will help influence and help improve the business within your organization. I'm going to talk about process-based leadership, and that's our leadership methodology that we put in place. And you'll see the key word there is process around that. And at the end, I'll give you the opportunity to attend a session on process-based leadership, as well as visit one of our client companies, Rockline Industries. Rockline is located in Arkansas, and they have seen tremendous benefit, higher levels of employee engagement, higher operating efficiencies as a result of process-based leadership. Our agenda today, I want to kick things off and talk about the current state of leadership and what do I see and what does my firm typically see leaders, how they're managing. Then I want us to move over to the future state of leadership of what I see world-class organizations doing to advance their business forward by giving their leaders, frontline leaders, their supervisors, processes to help manage. We're going to talk about process-based leadership and three of the components around that. This was the result of the survey that I had referenced before. Here are the top three challenges that came out. Difficulties in managing multiple generations in the workforce. And as the workforce ages and as the recession has gone on, people that once thought that they were going to retire have had to work longer than before. So now what you see is you see folks that are in their early to mid-60s. They're still working, and some of their, quote, work peers may be in their mid-20s. So there's a huge 40-year span, huge gap between the two with that. So leaders are having difficulties managing multiple generations because each generation really needs different skill sets to help them be effective. Ineffective processes for driving accountability. And I'm going to share with you later on a tool to bring visibility to accountability so that we can ensure that when we ask an employee to follow up on something, they'll actually follow through on that. And then this is one that really stuck out to me, is realizing the importance and impact of the right way to deliver information. And I believe organizations have become experts at advertising information. In other words, through email, just throwing a message out there and hope it sticks, hope it hits the right person within the organization. So at the end, I want to share with you what I believe and what Competitive Solutions believes to be the right way to deliver key information in the organization. Current state of leadership. What do I see when I walk into an organization? Well, I see many leaders are managing what I would call the 3 Ps of positional authority, proximity, and the powers of persuasion. Let me give you examples of each one of those. Positional authority, leaders using their title to motivate, to generate response. Leaders using their title when they send emails, hoping to create urgency and action around that. Proximity, the physical presence of the leader in a work area is what's driving performance. And I see it all the time when I go into companies, and whether I'm in a customer service area or I'm in the back office or out on the manufacturing floor, is I'm walking through with a leader. What do I typically see? People with their heads down, people working very hard. But when I'm not with the leader of that organization, I'm walking, I see people talking, chatting. So it's the proximity, the physical presence of the leader many times is driving the performance of that team. And then persuasion. I've met over my 20 years of doing this many persuasive leaders that could stand up in the cafeteria or in a general area and give a very dynamic, motivating speech about the business and how we all need to come together and rally around and get our heads down and work to improve the business. But my issue with persuasion and my issue with the other two of position and proximity is this: not sustainable. It will get you improved business results. I'll be the first to say that, but it won't get you sustainable results. When I talk about sustainable, I'm talking about day in, day out, week after week, getting the same result with that. Another issue that I see, many leaders managing by personality. And for leaders that are managing by personality, it's a matter of survival. They're being asked to do more with less. So when I have a project or I need something done today or tomorrow, I've got 2 or 3 people on my team, my go-to people, that I can go to day in and day out that will help me get that done. But I may have another 7 people on my team that I'm ignoring. I'm not developing their skill sets. And it creates frustration because of the work imbalance within that team. We're going to address that. Many organizations, their metrics today, their key performance indicators are simply thermometers. They're not thermostats. And what do I mean by that? If you think about a thermometer, all a thermometer does is it tells you the temperature. Thermostats tell you the temperature but allows you to make adjustments. And that's what happens many times that teams will have scorecards, they'll have metrics in place, but all it tells them, it just gives them a reading. They don't take the action to improve upon that. And that's something we're going to talk about or address in a little while. And then I don't see a lot of high-performance teams out of there. What I see is selective engagement. And go back to my example before about a team. You've got a team of 10 people. You've got 3 people that are highly engaged because the leader's calling them on a day-to-day basis. But then you've got another 7 that some are doing the bare minimum to get by and they're collecting a paycheck. Creates immense frustration within the team with that. So I'm going to pause right here. Connor, if you would launch our first poll of the day, and what I'm looking for is what's the current state of leadership in your organization?
All right, we'll go about 10 more seconds here, and if you do think of a question, go to your control panel, go to the question section, and type that in now. Got a little time for that, so about 5 more seconds, and then we'll share the results here. Okay, and Seth, it looks pretty close. 52% say that their leaders are managing by the 3 Ps, and 47% say that everything is being driven by selective engagement.
Okay, great. Thanks, Connor. So let's transition over to what's the future state of leadership. When I talk about future state, what do I see world-class organizations doing to manage the business, and what are their leaders doing? The first thing is they're setting what I call non-negotiable processes. And non-negotiable means this is how we do business. And my definition of process is a desired, consistent result. And that's key in my methodology, that these non-negotiable processes are going to give us that desired, consistent result. It's going to help us achieve that sustainability that I had talked about before. So it's not going to require the physical presence of the leader to be there. It's good. If we've got these processes developed and deployed in our organization, we should feel comfortable as leaders that our teams are operating with the same focus and urgency as if we were physically there with them. Leaders must learn to manage by process, not personality. And what I mean by that is we've got to elevate the expectations of everyone on our team. We've got to start spreading that workload around. In a little while, I'm going to share with you a performance management analysis where I can look at the levels of engagement within our team. These non-negotiable processes, and I'm going to give you three non-negotiable processes that when you get off this webinar at 10:30 Eastern today, you should be able to immediately start utilizing with your organization. And these 3 non-negotiable processes is going to create focus around the business. It's going to create urgency in the business. But then also we're going to have accountability throughout the organization with that. And what are leaders providing, but more importantly, what are our employees looking for? I call it the 3 Cs. What our employees are looking for and what world-class organizations have, they have clarity of a clear, consistent message about the business. They're connected to the business, and they have the capacity to know, are we winning, are we losing? And then there's that consistency. So no matter where I go in the organization, we've got consistent, standard, non-negotiable processes that help us run the business. And this is what I'm going to talk about going forward here. The first one I'm going to tackle, the first C, is I'm going to talk about connectivity and the need to have a robust scorecard system in place that links and aligns everyone in the organization from top down. I'm not talking about a scorecard at the senior level that employees look up to. I'm talking about scorecards down at what I call the local level, down within the employees, down at the middle management level, frontline, customer service, folks down on the shop floor. The next one I'm going to tackle is around consistency and the concept of accountability and the need to hold people accountable for results. And accountability is a term I hear a lot of organizations throw out. We need to hold people accountable. There is no accountability. And what I see lacking is a visible, tactical representation of accountability. That's what I'm going to share with you. And then I'm going to wrap up talking about communication. And the key is not advertising, but two-way, face-to-face communication to connect people to the business. So let's jump into our first C of connectivity and talk about business scorecards. And one of the things I want you to think about is a scorecard, again, it's not a thermometer. It doesn't just tell you the temperature. Your scorecard is a thermostat, and it allows you to make adjustments along the way. And the scorecard ownership, it doesn't need to reside with the leader. That scorecard ownership needs to reside with the team. I want the DNA of that team, those employees involved in that scorecard building. And let me give you an example of a scorecard. Here's a very quick snapshot of a software that we have here at Competitive Solutions called PBL Scorecard. Many of our client companies utilize this for their scorecard. But if you look at that, within 5 to 7 seconds, you know, are we winning, are we losing? Very visual. It's color-coded. And you'll see on the left side here, you'll see what's the area they're measuring, what's the key focus area, quality, what's the metric, the target number or the threshold that we have to be above or below, and then the owner. The owner is the person that needs to be able to speak to the performance of that metric. So when questions come out from members of the team or from the leadership team, one of these names here should be able to speak to the performance of that metric. But it's very visual. The leaders come up with the key focus areas, and you'll see their quality, cost, productivity, people. But then you need to cascade this throughout the organization so that the employees are coming up with the metrics on that. So next point here, leadership team, you need to create those key focus areas, typically 4 to 6 key focus areas. Company I was with 2 weeks ago in Illinois, safety, quality, reliability. Those are their key focus areas. And then every team, every scorecard comes up with metrics that can support those. No more than 15 goals per scorecard. There is a belief out there that we've got to measure everything. I want to see a scorecard that's got 15 metrics on it that you can answer, are we winning or are we losing? I don't want to see, and I saw this last fall with an engineering group, 72 metrics in 2-point font. I didn't even realize there was a font that was that small. Performance is color-coded, red or green. Are we winning? Are we losing? And then it's visually projected, and I hope you'll agree with me that when you looked at that scorecard, within 5 to 7 seconds, you knew that the current state of the business there. So then from there, the lower teams, they take that format, they take those key focus areas, they develop the tactical scorecards. This is going to help the leaders manage less because now the team is in charge. The team's got ownership of what they need to do to help the organization be successful. Scorecards are reviewed in every team meeting. We're going to get to this in a minute, so keep that in the back of your mind. Scorecards are reviewed in every team meeting as a standard agenda item, and then team members utilize an action register. Shortly, I'm going to show you an action register. This is where your scorecards are going to go from thermometers to thermostats. By having the team, not the leader or not someone 2 levels up, tell the team what they need to do differently for a metric that's red, but for the team to diagnose performance of that metric. Why is it red? What do we need to do about it? What are the behaviors, the corrective actions we can take to influence that metric. That's what needs to happen to move your scorecards from thermometers to thermostats. And then let me show you how you get that alignment, that roll-up within your organization. At the top level, here in the blue, common language and format is selected. What are our key focus areas? What is our scorecard template going to look like? Then this is going to help us transition from the strategic to the deployment of specific metrics, tactics. So if you think about your strategic plan, that's at the senior level, but then the metrics at the next levels down throughout your organization, they become the tactical metrics of how we're actually going to execute on the scorecard. And then the metric update and communication frequency based on the level of the organization. Typically at the lowest levels, what I see, what I like to see, is on a weekly basis, the teams coming together to talk about performance. And then at the higher levels, at the end of the month is when the leadership team would come together, pull out the scorecard, look at the roll-up and see how are we performing against stated goals and objectives. That's the first C. And by the way, folks, I'm sharing with you these 3 non-negotiable processes. I could spend 4 hours talking about each one of these. So what I'm trying to do is condense this down in a short time. But let me transition over to our next C of consistency. How we manage, and introduce you to a tool called an action register. And so non-negotiable number 2 is every team must have an action register. And here's an example of an action register. And again, this is taken from our software PBL scorecard that companies utilize. But you'll see the first action, or the second column, actions, what must happen. When you hear terms such as I will, someone should, let's do this, those are action terms. We got to capture what we're talking about the first time, not what we're talking about the third and fourth time. Next column, the applies to. What does it apply to as it relates to the team and to the business? Does it apply to something we've talked about as a team, or does it apply to a specific metric on the scorecard? So you'll see the ones there in quality, supplier defects, quality. Those are ones where the metric is red, the team's diagnosing the performance, and what are we doing about it? Responsibility. You see one person there. What I don't want to see is I don't want to see multiple names under the responsible party, because if you have multiple names, it will never get done. It will create frustration within your team, and the leader will get frustrated because things aren't getting done. And then they're color-coded. Red ones are past due, yellow ones are due in the future. So it brings visibility to commitments and deadlines, what people need to do. There are 3 utilizations that the leaders can implement with their team to be more effective. The first one is every meeting you open up with an action register, going through those actions that are past due. People don't mind going to meetings if something gets done, and the action register will help those meetings between the leader and the team be much more effective, because we're talking about something one time, we're putting it on the action register, and we're coming back to the next week and talking about what was done. So the action register will help you have an outcome-driven, action-focused meeting, and you're getting things done. Second thing that the scorecard will do for you is, the action register will do is it will transform your scorecard from a thermometer view of just telling you the temperature to a thermostatic view of telling you the temperature, but allowing you to take actions. So my belief is this: any metric on a scorecard that is red, there must be a subsequent corrective action associated with that. And again, that corrective action comes from the team. The team's closest to the business. I want them to say, here's why we're red, and here's what we're going to do about it. About 85% of the time, the team taking action within 30 days will move that metric from red to green. Again, the team's closest to it. And then the third, and let me jump ahead real quick and just give you an example, and I come back to the slide. This is what I'm talking about. You'll see on the left side here, here's the scorecard, but then these arrows demonstrate the connectivity of what that team is doing as it relates to it. So if I look at supplier defects here, I can click on this red metric right here, and I immediately am driven over or jump over to the corrective action associated with that. On-time delivery, same. I click on red, I immediately jump over to look at that. So this corrective action linking the scorecard and the accountability together, powerful tool. Third thing the Action Register can do for you is the performance management tool. And I'm going to pause here. And Connor, if you would launch our second poll of the day before we jump into the performance management piece, please.
There you go. Again, we'll give you about 30 seconds and then share the results. All right, about 10 more seconds for you. All right, Seth, with more than 80% of the participants responding, looks like only 16% of the people voting say that their current scorecard is actually a thermostat. Everyone else, it's either a thermometer or they don't really yet have a scorecard.
Okay, well that's interesting, and folks, I assure you, if you transform your scorecards from thermometers to thermostats, you will see some tremendous benefits with that. So the third thing I want to share with you around the Action Register is a performance management tool, and you heard me at the outset talk about the term selective engagement. Many organizations have got selective engagement, not collective accountability. And what I've done here is I've taken the Action Register for my team, and I'm measuring the level of engagement. But the other thing is, if you remember before I talked about managing by personality, that's what many leaders do. They fall into that trap because it's a matter of survival. Two things I want to point out here. One, as a leader, I am clearly managing by personality, because if you look at Shane and Gwen and Linda, those are the three people, those are my go-to people that when I need something done, that's who I go to and that's who I engage. But look at Linda. Linda is overwhelmed. She's got too much on her plate. Gwen's having a hard time getting the things done I'm asking her to do. Shane's my highest performer. So as a leader, I'm managing by personality, and I need to step back and start driving that consistency and start managing by process and engaging other people. But then the flip side to that is Anna and Patricia and John, here's the wake-up call for them that this accountability is real. It's not going to go away. And I've got two decision points. One, I need to step up and start volunteering and becoming engaged. Or my second decision point is I need to step out of the organization, because those are the two decision points there. So this is a very powerful tool with that you can utilize, taking the actions for the last 30 to 60 days, just doing a quick analysis. And I was with a county government last week, and the question came up that said, we really can't publish the names of people like that because of rules and regulations, and I'm fine with that. You don't need to put the names of your employees in the first column the first time you do this. The employees are going to know. They're going to sit there and think to themselves, well, I know that's Shane, and I know that's Gwen, and I know that's Linda, and I definitely know that's Anna and Patricia and John, because they work 3 hours a day, and then they just disappear, and no one can ever find them. So if you're uncomfortable with publishing names, I'm okay with that, because people are going to know. The numbers are not going to lie as it relates to that. They'll know who's doing what within the organization. So let's jump over to our third C that we're going to talk about here, and that's clarity. And that's the need to have a standard communication system where on a weekly basis or bi-monthly basis we communicate as a team. And what I'm talking about is a 30-minute face-to-face meeting to talk about the business, to come together. And if you go back to the very beginning of one of the challenges that leaders are facing today, it was this. It was realizing the importance and impact of the right way to deliver information. I have yet to meet anybody that says they don't value face-to-face time with their leader and their team to talk about performance. But many times we leave it up to chance, and we use methods of advertising as a way to communicate what's going on in the organization. Once a week, 30 minutes, talk about it. And here's a standard meeting agenda that I teach into the companies I work with. First thing is we're going to pull out that action register. And if you remember the ones on the action register that were in red, those are the only ones we're going to look at. We're not going to talk about the ones that are due next week or due next month, get status updates. I just want to know why that action was not done, or if it is done, let's clear it off. The next thing is a scorecard. The scorecard is really the one thing we have in common because it tells us as a team, are we winning or losing? Any metric that's red, you got to come up with a corrective action plan. Around the table, this is the engagement piece. This is where people have the opportunity to raise issues, concerns, ask questions, and many times what comes out of this is an action. And after about 2 minutes of discussion, what I say is, what's the action here? What needs to happen to get this resolved? Recognition. If you've been on these webinars before, you know that I'm a strong proponent that we need to do a better job of recognizing our employees. Organizations are quick to run out and provide feedback when things aren't going so well, but let's provide recognition. And when I'm talking about recognition, I'm talking about the intangible, informal, that doesn't cost you a dime. It's the handshake, it's the pat on the back that says, hey, we talked about how you stayed late on Friday when the power went out and the servers went down, how you were here till 9 o'clock ensuring that our servers were back up and running, so when we came in Monday morning, we were working the way we needed to. Pass up, pass down. I'm going to come back to that in just a second. I've got a slide to illustrate that. Action register review number 2. We're just going to go through the actions that were just generated out of that meeting. And what I want you to do is I want you to remove ignorance as an excuse with your employees. If you're a leader, make sure that people understand that, Connor, you're going to check with IT about the new laptops and when they'll be released for our employees. Yes. And you're going to do that by next Friday? Yes. Get that verbal affirmation. And the final thing I want you to think about is the meeting audit. Typically, where do we talk about how bad a meeting is in our organizations? We talk about it at the water cooler. We talk about it at the coffee pot. I even had one person one time say, I purposely scheduled a dental appointment during one of our meetings because I knew how painful that meeting was going to be, and I'd rather have gone to the dentist office than to sit in a 2-hour meeting that doesn't advance the business forward. Let's go back to this bullet point right here, pass up, pass down. What the pass up, pass down is, it's a bulletized briefing. What do we want every employee in our organization to know the next 48 hours? And the way the pass up, pass down works is this. You need to have a cascade or a waterfall effect of your communication where it starts at the top with the senior team on Monday morning. They're generating what's the pass down items we want employees to know. What's the critical information that needs to be disseminated throughout the organization, whether it's the next 24 to 48 hours. And then from there, so level 1 meets at Monday at 9 a.m., perhaps level 2 meets Monday at 11. Level 3 meets Mondays at 3. And then eventually gets down to the lowest level so that by Tuesday at 9 a.m., every employee has heard the critical information that they need to know about. I got a phone call last fall from a company, from an employee in a company that had a lot of angst and anxiety and said, there are people in suits walking around our office. Are we for sale? Do you know anything about this? I didn't know anything about it, but what it turned out to be is that sales and marketing had brought a new customer to the organization. It was just touring them around the organization. People thought that they were going to lose their jobs, that they were for sale. Had there been a pass-down item from the sales and marketing group, that would have alleviated a lot of angst and anxiety. So the question is, what's a pass-up? Well, pass-up may come from levels below that have questions about the information they received, or may just have questions in general. But the key is we've got a two-way flow of information, top-down, bottom-up within the organization. Again, I could spend 4 hours talking about a pass-up, pass-down process and how to improve communication. In fact, next month, our webinar will be around improving communication and meetings in your organization. Connor, if you would launch our third and final poll of the day, please.
Okay, about 10 more seconds here. Okay, with 79% of the participants voting, looks like in a landslide here, a mix of some advertising and some communication at 76%.
All right. Folks, let me wrap this up and tie this together for you. I talked about non-negotiable processes. I shared with you 3 non-negotiable processes I'd like to see your leaders, your frontline leaders, put in place within the organization. Second bullet point, those 3 non-negotiable processes. It's going to create a sense of urgency around the business. A business focus, the scorecard will help them focus on what's important. In that action register, you'll have that shared accountability throughout the organization. Connor, it looks like we got about 90 seconds left. Were there any questions that we received during our time?
Absolutely, lots of great questions. We'll get to just a couple now, and the rest I'll have you answer by email or give people calls. One here is somebody asked if you could clarify what you meant by making processes auditable. I think it's something you mentioned in the first couple of slides of the session.
Yeah, absolutely. If you go back to what I said before, how many times people go to training, but what are they really doing differently when they come back to work on Monday? Well, you have the ability to audit the processes I shared with you, because you can look at a scorecard, and if the scorecard's not updated, it's not populated, if the action register hasn't been touched in 3 to 4 months, that right there tells you people they're not following the non-negotiable processes. So you've got the ability to audit to see, are people doing what you've asked them to do? How about one more, Connor?
Okay. You mentioned the term non-negotiable 4 or 5 times, and people were asking, why is it so important that processes be non-negotiable?
Well, they've got to be non-negotiable because that's going to help us drive the consistency throughout the organization. And if we leave it up to chance, you're not going to have change within your organization. You're not going to have a better business focus. You're not going to have shared accountability or improved communication. Non-negotiable becomes how we do business. It's our standard operating procedures. And I don't want you to look out over your organization and you got 40% of the people are having weekly meetings and they have scorecards and they're your high performers, but then there's 60% that nothing's changed for them. Non-negotiable, how we do business, and it's incumbent upon the leaders to drive those throughout the organization. Folks, I want to thank you for joining us today. Remember, every Tuesday, 11 Eastern, we email out our weekly management tips. Next month, I'm going to spend 30 minutes talking about how can you improve communication, improve team communication in your organization. There's our website. Connor's going to launch an exit survey. If anyone's interested in touring what I consider a world-class organization, but spending a day in advance learning about process-based leadership and about the implementation, the development, the deployment of the processes I talked about, get some information on the seminar. I think we've got about 6 or 7 places left right now, so we'd love to see some of you join us today. Thanks very much for your time, and I look forward to speaking with you next month on communication. Have a great rest of your Wednesday. Bye-bye.